I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. After 15 years of silence, my son showed up at my new Lake Forest mansion with 12 suitcases and a wife who looked at me like I was already dead. "We're moving in, Mom," she announced, stepping past me like I was the doorman. "You have all this extra room and frankly you need us." They thought I was just a lonely old woman desperate for family. They had no idea I'd just sold my landscaping company for $18 million. And they definitely didn't know I was about to teach them the hardest lesson of their lives. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, hit that like button and let me know in the comments. My name is Sofia Martinez, but everyone calls me Sophie. I'm 70 years old, and I've spent the last 6 months learning that silence can be the most powerful weapon you'll ever own. I was standing on the limestone balcony of my new home looking out over Lake Michigan as the October sun painted the water gold and orange. The house was ridiculous, really. 8 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, a ballroom I'd never use, and enough space for 3 families. But after 45 years of living in a 2-bedroom ranch house that smelled like fertilizer and fresh-cut grass, I figured I'd earned the right to be ridiculous. My late husband Robert would have loved this place. He always said that one day when Martinez Landscapes really took off, we'd buy a house on the water. Somewhere we can watch the sunset without getting dirt under our fingernails. He'd joke, even though we both knew the dirt was permanent by then. It had worked its way into the creases of our hands under our nails, into the very fiber of who we were. Robert died 15 years ago. Heart attack at 55, right there in the greenhouse, holding a tray of seedlings he'd been planning to plant that afternoon. Our son Dylan found him. He was 27 then, fresh out of business school and full of ideas about modernizing the family business and expanding into commercial properties. That was the last real conversation we had, Dylan and me. At the funeral, before Scarlett. I took a sip of my tea, Earl Grey hot the way Robert used to make it, and tried not to think about the past. That's what the therapist I'd seen for exactly 3 sessions had told me. "Sophia, you need to stop dwelling on what you've lost and focus on what you have now." What I had now was a doorbell ringing. I set my cup down on the marble railing, the clink of china on stone too loud in the quiet evening. My hands were steady. They'd been steady for 45 years of pruning roses and hauling 50-pound bags of mulch. They'd been steady when I signed the papers selling Martinez Landscapes to Greenscape National for $18 million. They'd been steady when I wrote the check for this house, $4.2 million cash, no mortgage. But as I walked through the vast living room toward that heavy oak double door, something in my chest told me to be careful. I should have listened. I pulled open the door, and the evening air left my lungs. Dylan stood on my porch, and he looked older than his 42 years. His face was drawn eyes sunken into dark circles that makeup couldn't hide. He wore an expensive suit, I could tell by the cut, even though I'd never owned anything fancier than the navy dress I wore to Robert's funeral, but it was wrinkled like he'd slept in it. Next to him stood Scarlett. My daughter-in-law looked exactly the same as the last time I'd seen her. That was at Robert's funeral when she'd spent the entire service checking her phone and complaining about the heat. She had the same sharp features, the same calculating eyes, the same designer labels that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her blonde hair was swept up in one of those deliberately messy buns that takes an hour to perfect, and her makeup was flawless. She looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her Louboutin heel. Behind them, almost hidden in the shadow of a mountain of luggage, was a girl. I hadn't seen Lily since she was 2 years old. She was 17 now, and the transformation was heartbreaking. The vibrant toddler who used to chase butterflies in my backyard had been replaced by a ghost. She was painfully thin, her skin so pale it was almost translucent. She wore a thin denim jacket even though it was 50 degrees out and she was shivering. When our eyes met, she whispered, "Grandma." That single word hit me harder than any physical blow could have. I stood there gripping the door handle, my knuckles turning white. I waited for an explanation. I waited for an apology. I waited for Dylan to look me in the eye and say, "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry I didn't come when you called after Dad died. I'm sorry we pretended you didn't exist for 15 years. That's not what happened. Scarlett didn't even say hello. She didn't ask how I was doing. She simply looked past me, her gaze sweeping over the grand foyer with its crystal chandelier and imported marble floors, and something lit up in her eyes. It was the look a hunter gets when they spot prey. "Well," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness as she stepped forward. "You certainly kept this quiet, didn't you? Sophia, I must say I'm impressed. This place is huge. She brushed past me, her Chanel perfume so strong it made my eyes water. It definitely has enough room for all of us. I was too stunned to move for a moment. The sheer audacity of it paralyzed me like a wasp sting. These people hadn't spoken to me since the day I buried my husband, and now here she was walking into my sanctuary like she owned the deed. I stepped in front of her, blocking her path to the living room. My voice came out rough, like I'd swallowed gravel. I hadn't used it much lately. Most days, the only person I talked to was myself. "Hold on," I said. "You're not coming in here. Get your bags and get off my property." Scarlett stopped. She turned to look at me, and a smirk played at the corners of her mouth. She adjusted her silk scarf, Hermes probably knowing her, and let out a little laugh that sounded like glass breaking. "Oh, Sophia, stop being dramatic," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "We're family, and family helps each other. Besides, you're not going to turn us away." She stepped aside, revealing Lily again. "Not when your granddaughter is sick." The girl looked like she was about to collapse. Her eyes were glassy, unfocused, and she swayed slightly on her feet. "What's wrong with her?" I demanded, my voice harder now. "Just tired," Scarlett said quickly, waving her hand like she was swatting a fly. "Just a little flu. She needs a warm bed and some rest." She looked back at me, and her eyes turned cold. "You're not going to leave your own flesh and blood out in the cold, are you, Sophia? Even you're not that cruel." It was a trap. I knew it was a trap the second the words left her mouth. I could see the manipulation in her eyes, see the way she was using Lily as a human shield. She knew I was a hard woman. You don't build a landscaping empire in a male-dominated industry by being soft, but she also knew I had a weakness for children. She was betting everything on my decency overriding my anger. And God help me, it was working. I looked at Lily again. The girl's eyes were barely open and she was trembling. Whether it was from cold or fear or illness, I couldn't tell, but I couldn't let her stand out there. I stepped back. "Bring her in," I said, "but just her. You two can wait in the car." Dylan rushed past me before I could finish the sentence, his head down, dragging 3 massive Louis Vuitton suitcases across my freshly polished marble floor. The wheels left black marks on the cream-colored stone I'd just paid a fortune to have installed. "Hi, Mom," he mumbled as he passed. It sounded more like a whimper than a greeting, and he didn't meet my eyes. I watched them invade my space like termites finding new wood. Scarlett's perfume overpowered the subtle scent of lemon oil and lavender that I loved. The peace I'd felt 5 minutes ago, standing on my balcony with my tea, was shattered. I closed the door. The heavy thud echoed through the house like a judge's gavel. I turned to face them. Scarlett was already inspecting my furniture, running her manicured hand along the back of my Italian leather sofa like a pawnbroker appraising merchandise. "Nice," she said, her voice flat and evaluating. "Real leather. You must have been saving those pennies from cutting grass for a long time, Sophia." She turned to look at me, one perfectly sculpted eyebrow raised. "Did you win the lottery? Or did you rob one of your rich clients?" I ignored her. I looked at the antique clock on the mantel, a wedding gift from Robert's mother, one of the few things I'd kept from the old house. "You have 30 minutes, I said. Scarlett turned around, both eyebrows raised now. "Excuse me." "You have 30 minutes, I repeated. My voice was calm, but there was something dangerous underneath it. I could feel it myself, like the rumble before an earthquake. 30 minutes to explain why I shouldn't call the police and have you trespassed from my property. 30 minutes to explain where you've been for 15 years, and if I don't like the answer, you're leaving, all of you." Dylan flinched. He looked at Scarlett, waiting for her to tell him what to do. Even now, even as a grown man, he couldn't make a decision without her approval. Scarlett just laughed. She actually laughed, throwing her head back like I'd told the funniest joke she'd ever heard. Then she walked over to my sofa, and sat down, crossing her legs. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and contempt that made my blood boil. "You're not going to call the police, Sophia," she said, her voice dripping with confidence. "And do you know why?" I weighted my hand, inching toward the phone in my pocket. "Because we're all you have," she said. Each word was chosen carefully, designed to cut. "Robert is dead. Your friends are all dead or in nursing homes. You're sitting in this big empty house all by yourself, waiting to die. You need us, Sophia. You're lonely." She paused, letting that sink in. "And frankly, you owe us." "I owe you?" I asked quietly. "Yes," she hissed, and for just a second her mask slipped. I saw the real Scarlett underneath the one who was all rage and greed and desperation. You owe Dylan. He had a terrible childhood growing up with a father who smelled like fertilizer and a mother who was never home because she was too busy playing in the dirt. You owe him a comfortable life. She leaned forward. And now that you finally have some money, it's time to pay up. She stood up and smoothed her designer skirt. So be a good mother. Go tell your housekeeper or whoever keeps this place clean to prepare 3 bedrooms. We're tired, we're hungry, and we're staying. I looked at her standing in my living room like a queen surveying her domain. I looked at my son who was trembling by the door, unable or unwilling to meet my eyes. I looked at my granddaughter who had slumped against a suitcase, her eyes closing, looking like she wanted to disappear into the floor. I realized then what they were. They weren't family coming to reconnect. They were vultures circling something they thought was dying. They thought I was just a lucky old woman who'd stumbled into some money. They thought I was weak, that 15 years of silence had left me desperate for their affection. They thought they could walk in here and take what was mine. They were wrong about a lot of things, but I needed to know what they'd done to that girl. And I needed time to figure out exactly what game they were playing. I looked at Lily. Her breathing was shallow, and she was pale as a ghost. Whatever was wrong with her, it was more than just the flu. I made a decision right then. Not because I was lonely, not because I was weak, but because revenge, I'd learned in my 70 years, is a dish best served cold. Fine, I said. You can stay. You can. Scarlett smiled. It was a triumphant, predatory smile that made my skin crawl. I knew you'd see reason, Mom. But Mom, I continued, raising one finger, only for tonight. Lily looks sick and I'm not a monster, but this is my house, my rules. And the first rule is simple. I walked over to the wall where I kept the key to the master suite. I took it off the hook and put it in my pocket. Don't think for 1 second that you can manipulate me, Scarlett, I said. I'm not the same woman you spit on at the cemetery. I turned to Dylan. He was still standing by the door, looking like he wanted to bolt. Get your daughter some water, I ordered. She looks like she's going to pass out. And take your shoes off. You're tracking mud on my floor. As Dylan scrambled to obey, he'd always been good at following orders, just never good at making his own decisions. I saw Scarlett's eyes narrow. She was recalculating. She'd expected me to be grateful. She'd expected me to be soft. She was realizing this might be harder than she thought. But she had no idea. She had absolutely no idea what I was capable of. I showed them to their rooms, the guest suites down the east corridor, far from my private wing. The rooms were nice enough, queen beds with expensive linens, ensuite bathrooms with heated floors, views of the garden I'd designed myself. But they weren't the master suite. They weren't the rooms with the lake view. And they weren't anywhere near my office where I kept my important papers. I watched Scarlett's face as I showed her the accommodations. She tried to hide her disappointment, but I could see it in the tightness around her eyes. These will do, she said, her voice clipped. For now. Patty Anderson, my housekeeper, had already turned down the beds and laid out fresh towels. She gave me a look as she passed a look that said she didn't trust these people any more than I did. Patty had been with me for 3 months ever since I'd bought the house, and she was good at reading people. You had to be to work in a house this big. Will you be needing anything else, Ms. Martinez? She asked. No, thank you, Patty, I said. Why don't you head home? It's getting late. She hesitated, glancing at Scarlett, who was already criticizing the thread count of the sheets. Are you sure, ma'am? I'm sure, I said, though I appreciated her concern. I'll see you in the morning. After Patty left, I stood in the hallway for a moment listening. I could hear Scarlett's voice through the door, sharp and demanding, telling Dylan to check the locks and see if there's a safe in here. I could hear Lily's quiet crying muffled by a pillow. I went back to my room and locked the door. Then I locked the deadbolt. Then I sat on the edge of my bed and pulled out my phone. I had an email from Victoria Hayes, my lawyer. Subject line, background check, urgent. But before I could open it, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Soft, careful footsteps that were trying not to be heard. I pulled up the security app on my phone. I'd had cameras installed throughout the house, not in the bedrooms or bathrooms, of course, but in all the common areas. Living alone in a house this big, I'd wanted to feel safe. Now I was glad I'd made that investment. The camera feed showed Scarlett standing outside my office door. She was trying the handle. When she found it locked, she jiggled it, frustrated. Then she leaned down, peering into the keyhole. I turned up the volume on my phone. The cameras had microphones. Old fool, she hissed. He's hiding it in there. I know it. She turned and walked back toward her room. I watched her on the screen, her lips moving as she talked to herself. Did you see how his hands were shaking when he used the key? She whispered loudly. She's losing it, Dylan. Paranoid. Doesn't even know what day it is. We just have to play the part. Be the good son. In a week she'll be eating out of our hands. The feed switched to the guest room. Scarlett had left the door open a crack. I watched as she walked in and sat on the bed next to Dylan, who was staring at his phone with the expression of a man watching his own execution. And if she doesn't, Scarlett continued. Well, accidents happen to old people all the time. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I sat on the edge of my bed in the darkness watching the screen. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. They thought they were the predators in this house. They thought I was the prey. They were about to find out they'd walked into a lion's den. And the lion was hungry. The sun was barely up when I walked down the grand staircase of my own home. I usually enjoyed quiet mornings, a black coffee, a piece of whole wheat toast, and the newspaper on the patio. That was my ritual, the way I'd started every day since Robert died. But this morning I heard chaos. The smell of burnt butter hit me first, followed by the shrill sound of fingers snapping. I followed the noise to the kitchen and found a scene that made my stomach turn. Scarlett was standing in the center of my kitchen wearing a silk robe that I suspected she'd packed specifically for this performance. She looked like she was directing a Broadway play, and the star, or rather the victim, was Patty. My housekeeper was running back and forth between the stove and the island, her face flushed and her hands shaking. Patty was a gentle soul who took pride in her work. She knew exactly how I liked my eggs and how I took my coffee. But right now, she looked close to tears. This is completely unacceptable, Scarlett was saying, waving her hand at the spread of food on the table. We're starving and you're moving like you're walking through molasses. Don't they teach efficiency in housekeeper school? I looked at the table. It was piled high with food, fruit platters, pastries from the bakery in town. 3 different kinds of fresh squeezed juice, scrambled eggs, bacon, sausage. It was enough to feed a small army, yet there were only 3 of them. Dylan was already seated, shoveling food into his mouth like he hadn't eaten in a week. He didn't look up when I entered. He just kept eating mechanically, his eyes focused on his plate. Lily was sitting at the far end of the table, picking at a piece of dry toast. She looked even worse than she had last night, if that was possible. Her skin had a grayish tint, and there were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. I walked over to Patty and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. She jumped, startled, and I could see the relief in her eyes when she realized it was me. It's fine, Patty, I said softly. Why don't you take a break? Go tend to the laundry upstairs. I'll handle this. But ma'am, she whispered, terrified. She said go, I said more firmly this time. I insist. She scurried out of the room, casting one last fearful glance at Scarlett. I poured myself a cup of coffee from the pot on the counter. It was lukewarm. I didn't care. I leaned against the marble island and watched my daughter-in-law. She was cutting a piece of melon with surgical precision, completely unbothered by the fact that she'd just reduced a grown woman to tears. You treat people with respect in this house, Scarlett, I said. My voice was low, but it carried. She scoffed without looking up. Please, Sophia, you're too soft. That's why you were a gardener your whole life instead of actually making something of yourself. You don't know how to demand quality. She popped a piece of melon into her mouth. If you're going to live in a house like this, you need to learn how to manage staff. Otherwise, they'll walk all over you. She sat down next to Dylan and started buttering a croissant. Her eyes landed on the large bay window that overlooked my garden, my favorite view in the whole house. There was a massive oak tree right in the center, framing the lake beyond it. I'd spent hours planning that view, making sure every angle was perfect. You know, Scarlett said thoughtfully, that tree is too close to the house, and it's so loud when the wind blows. She looked at me. You should probably cut it down. Hire someone to take care of it. Unless, she smirked, you want to do it yourself? You still have your chainsaw, don't you? Dylan finally looked up, sauce dripping from his chin. Yeah, Mom, he mumbled. It's pretty loud. Maybe you could take a look at it. You have your tools here, right? The disrespect was breathtaking. It was so absolute, so casual that I almost laughed. They were sitting in my house eating my food and telling me to go do yard work like I was the hired help. But I didn't laugh. I didn't argue. I just set my coffee cup down with a gentle clink. Sure, I said. I'll go take a look. Scarlett didn't even say thank you. She just turned back to her eggs, complaining that they were getting cold. I walked out the back door into the crisp morning air. The October chill felt clean compared to the suffocating atmosphere of the kitchen. I walked past the oak tree, which wasn't too close to the house and wasn't loud at all. Scarlett just wanted to see if I'd jump when she snapped her fingers. I walked to the edge of the property near the old tool shed where I knew they couldn't hear me. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. Jack Torres answered on the second ring. Jack had been my foreman at Martinez Landscapes for 20 years, right up until the day I sold the company. He was 65 now, still strong as an ox, with hands as calloused as mine and a heart of pure gold. Sophie. His rough voice came through the line. Everything okay? You don't usually call this early unless something's on fire. It's about to be, I said. There was a pause. Then I heard the familiar click of Jack's lighter. He was lighting one of those cigarettes I'd been telling him to quit for 2 decades. They're here, Jack, they said. The vultures. Ah, hell, he breathed out. All of them, Dylan, Scarlett, and Lily. And it's worse than I thought. I told him about the arrival, about Scarlett's demands, about the way they were treating Patty. I told him about the conversation I'd overheard through the security cameras. When I finished, there was a long silence. What do you want to do, boss? Jack finally asked. You want me to come over there? I can bring the boys. We'll scare them off. No, I said. That's too easy. I want to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. What do you need? I need you to play a role, I said. I need a script. They think I'm senile. They think I'm desperate. So let's give them what they expect. I explained my plan. Jack listened without interrupting, and when I finished, I heard him chuckle a low, dark sound that I'd heard 1,000 times before when we were about to pull off something impossible. You want to play the poor old woman card? He asked. Exactly. I'm going to call you back in 5 minutes. When I do, I'm going to be shouting, panicking. You just need to be the guy on the other end telling me bad news. What kind of bad news? Tell me the bank is calling in my mortgage. Tell me my investments crashed. Tell me the IRS is knocking. Make it sound bad, Jack. Make it sound like I'm about to lose everything. Got it, he said. I could hear the grin in his voice. Give him hell, Sophie. I hung up and stood there for a moment looking at my beautiful house. I'd bought this place to be a sanctuary, a reward for 45 years of hard work. Now it was going to be a stage. I took a deep breath, mussed up my hair a little to look frazzled, and dialed Jack's number again. I waited until the counter hit 3 seconds. Then I started screaming. What do you mean, frozen? I yelled into the phone, walking quickly back toward the patio doors. Jack, you have to stop them. I can't lose this house. I just bought it. I burst into the kitchen, the phone pressed to my ear, my face a mask of pure panic. No, I said loudly, making sure my voice carried to the dining table. I paid the deposit. I thought I had more time. The room went silent. Dylan's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Scarlett spun around in her chair, her eyes wide. I paced back and forth in front of the island, ignoring them, focusing entirely on my performance. What do you mean there's nothing left in the other account? I demanded, my voice trembling with what they would interpret as desperation. Jack, listen to me. You have to move the funds. You have to... I stopped pacing. I leaned heavily against the counter, letting my legs look like they were about to give out. Next week? I whispered, just loud enough for them to hear. They're coming to seize the assets next week. I let my voice break. Jack, I have family here. I can't be on the street. Not again. I listened to the silence on the other end of the line. Jack was playing his part perfectly, letting me control the entire conversation, then slowly lowered the phone. I stared at the floor, letting my shoulders slump. I looked up at them. Dylan was pale. He looked like he was about to be sick all over his expensive breakfast. He'd come here looking for a lifeboat, and I'd just told him the ship was sinking. But Scarlett didn't look scared. She didn't look worried for me. She didn't look concerned that her mother-in-law was about to lose her home. I watched her face carefully. I saw the exact moment the wheels started turning. Her eyes narrowed, shifting from me to the expensive appliances, to the imported tile, to the designer fixtures. She wasn't looking at a tragedy. She was looking at an opportunity. Her face smoothed out into a mask of concern, but I saw the spark in her eyes. It was greed. Pure, unadulterated greed. She wasn't thinking about saving me. She was thinking about what she could grab before the bank took it all. Oh, Sophia, she said softly, standing up and walking toward me. Her voice was honey-sweet, but her eyes were calculating. Is everything okay? Who was that? I looked at her and I knew the trap was set, and she had just walked right into it. I left the kitchen with what I hoped looked like the weight of the world on my shoulders. I walked slowly, stooped over, as if the news of my supposed financial ruin had physically broken my spine. I muttered something about needing to find documents and headed toward the hallway that separated the main living area from the guest wing. But as soon as I turned the corner out of their sight, I straightened up. My step became silent and sure. I wasn't a woman defeated. I was a hunter who had just laid the perfect trap, and now I needed to see if the prey had taken the bait. I knew exactly where they would go. The guest suite I'd assigned them was at the far end of the east corridor, a large room with walls that weren't as thick as they should have been. It was a design flaw the previous owners had complained about, but I'd never bothered to fix it. Now I was grateful for that flaw. I bypassed my office and slipped into the linen closet next to their room, leaving the door cracked just an inch. It was a trick I'd used when Dylan was a teenager, catching him trying to sneak out at night to meet girls. I never thought I'd have to use it 40 years later to protect myself from him. The voices started almost immediately. They were hushed but angry, the sound of desperate people realizing their lifeboat had a leak. "We have to go," Dylan said, his voice pitching up in that whiny tone he'd had since childhood. "Did you hear her on the phone? The bank is coming next week, Scarlett. If we stay here, we're going to get dragged into her mess. They might come after our assets, too, if they think we're connected." I pressed closer to the crack in the door, holding my breath. "We came here for a free ride, not to pay off a bankrupt old woman's debts," Dylan continued. "We should leave now before—" "You're an idiot, Dylan," Scarlett cut him off. Her voice was cold and sharp, like a scalpel cutting through flesh. "Keep your voice down and think for 1 second instead of panicking like you always do. Think about what—" Dylan's voice was getting higher. "0 is 0, Scarlett. If the house is gone, the money is gone. We're back to square one, except now Carter knows where we are." My blood ran cold at the name. Carter. Who was Carter? "Listen to me very carefully," Scarlett said, and I could hear her moving closer to Dylan. "If the bank is seizing the house next week, that means we have 7 days. 7 days where she is still the legal owner. 7 days where she is panicked, confused, and desperate." "So what?" Dylan asked. "What good does that do us?" "She's 70 years old," Scarlett snapped. "She's confused. She probably has other assets she's forgotten about or accounts the bank hasn't frozen yet. We just need to find them before the bank does." There was a pause. I heard the sound of fabric rustling, like someone sitting down on the bed. "And more importantly," Scarlett continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "she has insurance." I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning in the closet. "Life insurance," Scarlett continued. "A woman like Sophia definitely has a policy. Probably a big one from when she owned that landscaping company. And if she loses everything, if the stress becomes too much—" She paused. "Well, old women have heart attacks all the time, don't they?" I stood in the darkness, my hands clenched into fists so tight my fingernails dug into my palms. They weren't just talking about stealing my money anymore. They were talking about my life. They were weighing whether I was worth more alive or dead. "But even if she doesn't die," Dylan said, and I heard the hesitation in his voice, though not nearly enough of it. "What good is she to us?" "Broke guardianship," Scarlett said. The word landed with heavy finality. "If she's losing her mind and her money, we can get her declared incompetent. But we need to get ahead of it. We get her to sign emergency guardianship papers over to us before the bank moves in." "She won't sign," Dylan said. "Mom's not stupid." "She's scared," Scarlett corrected him. "Did you see her shaking in the kitchen? She's terrified of being poor again, of ending up in some state-run facility eating cat food. We just have to push her a little harder, make her feel like we're her only salvation." There was another pause. I pressed my ear closer to the crack. "And if she resists?" Dylan asked quietly. "Then we make her compliant," Scarlett said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. It was a terrible sound. "I have some things in my bag that can help her sleep. Help her relax. If she's a little groggy, she won't read the fine print. A couple of those little blue pills dissolved in her tea, and she'll sign whatever we put in front of her." The silence that followed was deafening. My son, my only child, the boy I'd carried for 9 months and raised for 18 years, did not object. He did not defend me. He did not say that drugging his mother was a line he wouldn't cross. "Okay," he said finally. His voice was small, defeated. "Okay, but we have to do it fast, before she figures out what we're doing." "We'll do it tonight," Scarlett said briskly. "I'll call Rick. He's that lawyer friend of mine, remember? The one who helped with the thing in Nevada. He owes me a favor. He can draft the papers for a fee, no questions asked. We'll get it done over dinner." I had heard enough. I stepped back from the door, moving silently on the plush carpet. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It had slowed down into a steady, heavy rhythm, the beat of a war drum. The grief I'd felt earlier, the tiny lingering hope that maybe my son still had a shred of decency in him, was gone. It had been incinerated by what I'd just heard. They wanted to drug me. They wanted to steal from me. And if I became inconvenient, they were willing to let me die. Fine, I wouldn't kick them out. Kicking them out was too easy, too merciful. If I threw them out now, they'd just find another victim, some other elderly person to prey on. Number one, I was going to let them stay. I was going to let them think they were winning right up until the moment the trap snapped shut. I walked back toward the main foyer, my mind racing with plans. I needed to call Victoria, my lawyer. I needed to secure the perimeter. I nearly collided with a small figure. Lily, she jumped back, her eyes wide and terrified. She was clutching a ragged backpack to her chest like it contained all her worldly possessions. In the morning light streaming through the foyer windows, she looked even more fragile than she had last night. Her skin was translucent, the blue veins visible beneath the surface. She had the look of someone who'd been slowly starving. "Grandma," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I was just, "It's okay, sweetheart," I said gently, trying not to look like the vengeful fury I felt inside. "You didn't do anything wrong." She looked around frantically, checking the stairs, checking the hallway behind me. She was trembling and not from cold. She took a step closer to me, invading my personal space in a way that told me she was desperate. "Grandma," she whispered again, and this time her voice cracked. "You have to be careful." I frowned, leaning down to her level. "What do you mean, honey?" "Mom," the word came out like a curse. "She has pills, the blue ones. She used to give them to Grandma Eleanor before she went to the home." My blood ran cold. Grandma Eleanor was Scarlett's mother. I remembered her vaguely, a sharp-tongued woman who'd never approved of Dylan. She'd passed away a few years ago. Everyone said it was natural causes, a peaceful slip into dementia, and then death. Now, looking at the terror in my granddaughter's eyes, I wondered just how natural it had been. "She talks to Dad about it," Lily continued, the words tumbling out fast and quiet. "She says you're confused. She says you need help resting. But you don't, Grandma. You're sharp. I see it. Your eyes, they're not confused at all." Tears were streaming down her face now. "Please don't drink the tea. Please don't sign the papers. I heard them talking last night and Her voice broke completely. "They're going to send me away." I felt something crack in my chest. "What, once they get the money?" she sobbed. "They said they're going to send me to a boarding school in Arizona, a bad one, for troubled girls, just to get me out of the way." She looked over her shoulder again, terrified that Scarlett would appear at any moment. "But that's not even the worst part." "Tell me," I said, placing my hands on her thin shoulders. "Tell me everything." "We owe money, Grandma," she whispered. "Bad money, to a man named Carter Williams. He's I don't know what you call it, a loan shark in Chicago. Dad gambled, a lot, and he lost. And now we owe this man $500,000. $500,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. "Carter is scary," Lily continued, her whole body shaking now. "He came to our old house before we lost it. He threatened Dad. He said if he didn't get his money, he would take something else." She paused, and a fresh wave of tears spilled over. "He has a son, Vincent. He's 25. He's been in jail twice. Carter said if Dad couldn't pay, he would accept a trade." I felt nausea rise in my throat. "A trade?" "Me," Lily whispered. "He wants me to marry Vincent. He said it would merge the families and settle the debt. And Mom," her voice turned bitter, "Mom said it was a good match. She said Vincent is rich. She said I should be grateful to help the family." She grabbed my arms, her fingers digging in with surprising strength. "They brought me here to hide me until the wedding arrangements are made. They want your money to pay off the rest of the debt so they can start over. but the deal with Carter that stands, unless she couldn't finish. She dissolved into sobs and I pulled her into my arms. My granddaughter, 17 years old, and they were going to sell her like cattle to save themselves. I held her for a long moment, letting her cry into my shoulder. My mind was working at lightning speed, calculating, planning. Then I pulled back and looked her in the eye. "Listen to me very carefully, Lily," I said. My voice was low and fierce, and I let her see the strength that had built an empire. "Nobody is sending you anywhere. Nobody is marrying you off to some thug. Nobody is going to hurt you. Do you understand me?" She blinked, tears still streaming down her face. "But the debt? Let me worry about the debt," I said. "I have resources they don't know about. I have friends they can't imagine. But to fix this, to really fix this, and make sure they can never hurt you again, I need you to be strong. Can you do that?" "I'm not strong," she said. "I'm just scared." "Scared is good," I told her. "Scared keeps you alert, but I need you to turn that fear into something useful. We're going to play a game, Lily, a very dangerous game. I need you to go back into that house and pretend. Pretend you're the obedient daughter. Pretend I'm just a confused old woman losing her mind. Can you do that?" She hesitated. "Why?" "Because if they think they're winning, they'll get sloppy," I explained. "They'll make mistakes, and when they do, I'll be there to catch them." I squeezed her hand. "I'm going to destroy them, Lily. Not physically, I'm going to destroy their greed. I'm going to strip them of every lie they've told. But I need time. Are you with me?" Lily looked at me for a long moment. I saw something change in her eyes, a spark of anger igniting where there had only been fear. "They sold my car," she said quietly. "It was a Honda, nothing fancy, but I saved up for it working at the diner after school. They sold it to pay for the plane tickets here." She took a deep breath and nodded. "I'm with you, Grandma. Let's get them." I pulled a handkerchief from my pocket and handed it to her. "Good girl. Now wipe your eyes and go back to your room. If they ask where you've been, tell them you were exploring the house. Can you do that?" "Yes," she said, her voice steadier now. "And Lily, one more thing. Don't eat or drink anything your mother gives you directly. Only eat from the communal dishes and only drink from sealed bottles. Understand?" The fear flashed back in her eyes, but she nodded. "I understand." I watched her slip back up the stairs, clutching my handkerchief like a lifeline. Then I went to my office to make some calls. I drove to downtown Chicago in my old Ford F-150, the truck I'd kept from the Martinez Landscapes days. Dylan and Scarlett probably thought I'd sold it, but I could never bring myself to part with it. Robert and I had bought it together in 1995, and it still ran like a dream. The drive usually took an hour, but I made it in 45 minutes. My mind was racing faster than the engine. Victoria Hayes' office was in one of those glass towers that make you feel small when you look up at them. But Victoria didn't make anyone feel small. She was the kind of lawyer who could make a grown man cry with a single raised eyebrow. She'd handled the sale of my company 2 years ago, negotiating that $18 million deal without breaking a sweat. When I walked into her office wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, my gardening clothes, her receptionist didn't even blink. She knew exactly who I was. "Sophia," Victoria said, standing up from behind her massive mahogany desk. She didn't offer a handshake. She just pointed to the chair across from her. "You look like a woman who's about to bury a body." "Coffee or Scotch, May?" "Coffee," I said, sitting down heavily. "Black. And I'm not burying a body, Victoria. I'm trying to stop one from being buried. Mine." I told her everything. I told her about the surprise visit, about the manipulation, about the plan to drug me, about the loan shark, about the threat to Lily. I told her about the conversation I'd overheard about Scarlett's pills, about the accident they were planning. Victoria listened in silence, her face a perfect mask of professional detachment. But I saw her knuckles turn white as she gripped her pen. When I finished, she opened a thick file folder on her desk. "I thought you might need this," she said, sliding the folder toward me. "When you called me yesterday asking for a background check on Dylan, I put my best investigator on it immediately." I opened the folder. The first page was a mugshot. It was Dylan, but younger, maybe 8 years ago. His hair was longer, and he had a black eye. "What is this?" I asked, my voice steady despite the ice forming in my veins. "That's from a credit card fraud arrest in Nevada, 2015, Victoria said. "The charges were dropped. The victim didn't want to press charges, but it's on record." She flipped to the next page. "This is more recent. Currently, there's a warrant for his arrest in Florida. Credit card fraud again, plus identity theft. He's been moving from state to state, running what essentially amounts to a Ponzi scheme with cryptocurrency investors. I stared at the papers. My son. The boy I'd taught to fish. The boy I'd carried on my shoulders through the park. He was a con artist. He's not just a bad businessman, Sophia, Victoria said gently. He's a criminal, and he's desperate. She flipped to another page. The debt is real. Carter Williams is a loan shark who fronts as a private lender. He's mob-connected, not Chicago outfit, but close enough. He bought Dylan's gambling debts from 3 different casinos and consolidated them. The total is actually $542,000 with interest and penalties. And the threat to Lily, I asked, my voice hollow. Victoria's expression darkened. Also real. I found a contract not legally binding, obviously, but it exists. Dylan signed it. It specifies that in lieu of payment, his daughter Lily will marry Carter's son Vincent within 6 months. She pulled out a photo. It showed a young man with cold eyes and prison tattoos on his neck. Vincent Williams, 25 years old, 2 assault convictions, 1 domestic violence charge that was dropped when the victim recanted. He's exactly the kind of man no parent should ever let near their daughter. I closed the folder. I couldn't look at it anymore. What do you want to do? Victoria asked. I sat back in the chair looking out the window at the gray Chicago skyline. I felt old, older than my 70 years. I felt every sacrifice I'd ever made, every 14-hour day under the hot sun, every missed school play because I was building a business. And for what? So my son could become this. But then I thought of Lily. I thought of her terrified eyes, her thin shoulders, her quiet crying. Can you buy the debt? I asked. Victoria blinked. Excuse me? The debt. The $542,000 Dylan owes to Carter Williams. Can you buy it? Sophia, Victoria said carefully. That's $500,000. You'd essentially be paying off his gambling debts. No, I interrupted. I wouldn't be paying it off. I'd be buying it. I want to own that debt, Victoria. If Carter owns it, he controls Dylan. If I own it, I control Dylan. And if I control Dylan, I can crush him legally. Victoria stared at me for a long moment. Then a slow, shark-like smile spread across her face. You want to be his creditor. I want to be his nightmare, I said. Can you do it? She pulled out her phone. I'll make the call. But Sophia, this is a lot of money. Are you sure? Use the emergency fund, I said. The one we set up for situations like this. Make the call, Victoria. I want that debt in my name by tomorrow morning. She nodded and started dialing. I left her office an hour later with a copy of the investigator's dossier tucked under my arm. I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't know was there. I had a weapon now. A nuclear option. They thought they were playing checkers, but I'd just bought the chessboard. I got back to the house around 6 in the evening. The sun was setting over the lake, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. It should have been beautiful, but all I could think about was the trap I was setting. I entered through the garage, trying to be quiet. I wanted to get to my office and lock away the dossier before anyone saw me. But as I crept down the hallway, I noticed something wrong. My office door was ajar. I'd locked it. I was absolutely certain I'd locked it. I stepped closer, peering through the crack. Scarlett was inside, rummaging through my desk drawers. She was moving frantically, tossing papers aside, looking for something specific. I watched her for a moment, hidden in the shadows. She looked desperate, sweaty. The cool, arrogant woman from yesterday was gone, replaced by a frantic scavenger. She stopped suddenly, her hand closing around something on my desk. It was a small orange pill bottle, the multivitamins I took for my joints. The label was faded and hard to read unless you looked closely. Her eyes lit up. Got you, she whispered. I stepped into the doorway. Looking for something, Scarlett? She spun around, gasping, nearly dropping the bottle. She clutched it to her chest, her face going pale, then flushing red. Sophia, she stammered. I didn't hear you come in. I was looking for a pen. To leave you a note. A note? I repeated, my voice flat. In my locked office, inside my desk drawer. The door was open. She lied smoothly, recovering her composure with practiced ease. And I found these. She held up the pill bottle. Digoxin. This is for heart failure. Isn't it, Sophia? It wasn't digoxin. It was a generic brand of glucosamine sulfate. but the faded label could be misread if you wanted to see something else. And Scarlett desperately wanted to see me as sick. "Why didn't you tell us?" She continued, her voice dripping with fake concern. "You seem so frail lately, so forgetful. Leaving doors unlocked, getting confused about money calls. It all makes sense now, doesn't it? Your heart isn't pumping enough blood to your brain." I looked down at the floor, hiding the disgust in my eyes. I let my shoulders slump. "Maybe," I muttered, playing my role. "Maybe I am getting worse." Scarlett placed a hand on my arm. She squeezed it not gently, but like she was testing the strength of a piece of meat before buying it. "You shouldn't be managing all this alone, Sophia," she said, her voice honey-sweet but her grip iron-tight. "The stress of the house, the bills, the bank calling. It's going to kill you. Literally. You need rest. You need someone to take the burden off your shoulders." I looked up at her, feigning hopelessness. "I don't know what to do, Scarlett. The bank called again today. They said I have to sign some papers or they'll take the house tomorrow." I was lying, of course. The bank hadn't called. But Scarlett didn't know that. "Tomorrow," she gasped, her eyes widening with what she probably thought looked like concern, but was actually greed. "Oh my God. Okay, Sophia, listen to me. I can fix this. I know exactly what to do." She pulled out her phone. "I have a friend, a very good lawyer. His name is Rick Sullivan. He specializes in asset protection for seniors. I called him earlier just in case. He's in the area. I can have him come over tonight. Right now." "Tonight?" I asked, backing away slightly, acting overwhelmed. "That seems so fast. I'm tired, Scarlett. Can it wait?" "No!" she insisted, stepping forward, crowding me. "It can't wait, Sophia. If you don't act tonight, you'll lose everything. Rick can draw up some papers, simple papers just to put the assets in a trust or assign a guardian to handle the legal battles for you, so you can rest." "Wouldn't you like to rest, Sophia? Wouldn't you like to sleep without worrying?" I looked at the vitamin bottle in my hand. I looked at her hungry eyes. She had a lawyer on speed dial. This Rick Sullivan was probably part of her scam, ready to help her steal my life. I let out a long, shaky breath. "I suppose so," I said quietly. "If you really think it will help." "It will save you," she promised. "I'll call him now. You go wash up. Dinner will be ready soon. We'll sign everything after dessert. It'll be a celebration, the start of your new peaceful life." She hurried out of the room, phone already to her ear, not even bothering to close the door she'd broken into. I stood there alone in my office, tightening my grip on the vitamin bottle until the plastic creaked. Rick Sullivan was coming. Good. Let him come. I had a dossier that proved my son was a felon. I had a lawyer buying their debt. And now I had them exactly where I wanted them. They thought they were bringing in the closer to finish me off. They were just bringing another fly into my web. Rick Sullivan arrived at 7:30 sharp. He was a small man with shifting eyes and a smile that showed too many teeth. He wore an expensive suit that didn't quite fit right, and he smelled of cheap cologne and stale tobacco, the kind of scent that clings to people who spend too much time in back rooms making deals they shouldn't. Scarlett greeted him at the door like he was a long-lost brother, kissing his cheek and whispering something in his ear that made him nod and glance toward the kitchen where I was sitting. I was ready. I'd spent the last hour practicing in the bathroom mirror, perfecting my performance. I let my jaw go slack. I stooped my shoulders until my back genuinely ached. I deliberately left patches of my hair uncombed, giving myself a disheveled appearance. When they walked into the dining room, I was staring blankly at a bowl of mashed potatoes, my hands trembling just enough to make the silverware rattle against the china. "Sophia, this is Rick," Scarlett said, her voice loud and slow like she was talking to a child. "He's the friend I told you about. The lawyer. He's here to help us with the paperwork." I looked up, blinking slowly. "Rick?" I muttered. I thought we were playing cards tonight. Where's the deck?" Rick chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. "No cards tonight, Mrs. Martinez, just a few signatures. We want to make sure your assets are safe from that nasty bank, don't we?" We sat down to dinner. It was a surreal affair. Scarlett had ordered takeout from a high-end steakhouse charged to my credit card, I was certain, and plated it on my fine china to make it look homemade. She poured wine for everyone, except me. For me, she poured a glass of water and placed the vitamin bottle next to it with theatrical concern. "See?" she whispered to Rick, just loud enough for me to hear. "Strict medication regimen. Her heart is basically a ticking time bomb." I decided to escalate the performance. I reached for the salt shaker and let my hand spasm, knocking it over. Salt spilled across the mahogany table in a white cascade. "Oh," I mumbled. Clumsy me. I looked directly at Dylan, who was cutting his steak with a savagery that betrayed his anxiety. "Son, did you feed the dog?" Dylan looked up confused. "What dog, Mom? You don't have us the dog," I insisted. "The brown one." "What was his name, Charlie?" "No, that's not right. We'd never owned a dog, but they didn't know that for certain." I saw Scarlett kick Dylan under the table. She was smiling now, a triumphant, wicked smile. She leaned toward Rick and whispered loud enough for me to hear, "See, it comes and goes. Some days she doesn't even know what year it is. Dementia. Rapid onset. We need to get this done before she forgets her own name." Rick nodded sympathetically and pulled a thick stack of documents from his briefcase. He pushed aside his half-eaten steak and spread the papers across the table. They were dense with legal jargon: emergency guardianship, durable power of attorney, revocable living trust. It was a death warrant for my freedom. If I signed these, I would legally become incompetent in the eyes of the state. They would control my money, my medical decisions, my residence. They could throw me in a state-run nursing home the next morning and sell this house before lunch. "Just a few formalities, Mrs. Martinez," Rick said, uncapping a heavy fountain pen. "This is what we call a medical registration. It just tells the doctors that Scarlett and Dylan can pick up your prescriptions. That's all. Standard procedure for someone with your condition." I looked at the papers. I looked at the pen. I let my hand hover over the signature line, shaking violently. "I don't know," I said, my voice wavering. "This looks like a lot of pages for picking up prescriptions." "It's just government red tape, Sophia," Scarlett said, and I could hear her patience thinning. "Just sign it. The bank is coming tomorrow. Remember, if you don't sign this, they'll take the house and you'll be on the street. Do you want to sleep under a bridge?" I looked at her with wide, fearful eyes. "No, no bridge. I like my bed." "Then sign," she hissed. I took the pen. I brought the tip down to the paper, letting it hover there for a long moment. Then I pulled back. "Wait. If I sign this, can I stay here? You won't make me leave, will you? I promised Robert I'd never leave another house. He made me promise." Scarlett rolled her eyes. She looked at Rick, who shrugged. "Of course you can stay, Mom," Dylan said, his voice cracking. "We just want to help you." Liar, I thought. You're lying through your teeth. I lowered the pen again. I made a mark, a shaky, illegible line that looked nothing like my actual signature. "Press harder, Sophia," Scarlett snapped, leaning over the table. "And write your full name. Sophia Martinez. Stop shaking." I looked up at her, feigning confusion. "Who's Sophia? I'm Sophie. Robert always called me Sophie." "Sign the damn paper, you senile old fool," Scarlett shouted, slamming her hand on the table so hard the wine glasses jumped. The room went deadly silent. Rick looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. Even Dylan looked shocked by her outburst. That was the signal. Lily, who had been sitting silently at the end of the table throughout this entire charade, stood up. She was holding a large pitcher of ice water we'd arranged this earlier during a brief moment when Scarlett was on the phone. My granddaughter walked toward me ostensibly to refill my glass. Her hands were shaking real fear, not performance, but she was committed to the plan. As she passed behind Rick and Scarlett, she tripped. It was a beautiful performance. Her arms flailed and the pitcher flew from her hands in a perfect arc. Ice water gallons of it cascaded onto the table. It soaked the tablecloth. It soaked the expensive takeout steaks. And most importantly, it soaked the stack of legal documents, turning the crisp paper into a sodden, illegible mess. "Oh no!" Lily cried, putting her hands to her mouth. "I'm so sorry I tripped on the rug," Scarlett shrieked. She jumped up, brushing water off her designer dress. She looked at the ruined papers, watching the ink run and blur, and her face turned a color I'd never seen before, a deep, violent purple. "You stupid little brat!" she screamed. And then, without thinking, without hesitation, she swung her hand back and slapped Lily across the face. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. Lily stumbled back, clutching her cheek, tears instantly springing to her eyes. I froze. The acting stopped. The shaking in my hands stopped. The fog cleared from my eyes like someone had flipped a switch. For one heartbeat, just one single moment, I wasn't the senile old woman anymore. I was Sophia Martinez. The woman who had fired men twice her size for disrespecting my employees. The woman who had built an empire with her bare hands. and I stared at Scarlett with cold, murderous rage. She saw it. She saw the change in my eyes, and for just a second, real fear flashed across her face. She took a step back. She'd seen the lion behind the mask, but I caught myself. It was too soon. If I broke character now, I'd lose everything. I forced my body to slump. I forced my hands to start shaking again. "My water," I whimpered. "You spilled my water." Scarlett blinked, confused by my sudden shift back to helplessness. She looked from me to Lily, who was sobbing quietly in the corner, to the ruined papers dissolving into mush on the table. Rick cleared his throat. "Well," he said, trying to salvage the situation, "the papers are destroyed. I'll have to draft new ones. I don't have a printer here. I'll need to go back to my office." "It's fine," Scarlett cut him off, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. "Go back to your office. Print them again. Bring them back in an hour. We'll do this tonight." "No," I said. Scarlett spun around. "What did you say, no?" I repeated louder this time. "I'm tired. The yelling hurts my head. The water is everywhere. I can't sign wet papers." I stood up slowly, leaning heavily on the table like my legs might give out. "We'll do it tomorrow." "Tomorrow is too late," Scarlett argued, stepping into my path. "The bank? Tomorrow is Saturday," I interrupted, letting a goofy smile spread across my face. "The bank doesn't come on Saturday. We have time, and I want to have a party." "A party?" Scarlett asked, incredulous. "Are you insane? A housewarming party?" I said, the smile widening. "I never had one. If I'm going to lose the house or sign it away, I want one last celebration. I want to invite my friends." "You don't have any friends," Scarlett spat. "I have Jack," I said. "And the boys from the old company. I want to invite them. Tomorrow night. We'll have a big dinner, and then I'll sign the papers in front of everyone. A ceremony, yes." I nodded, pleased with myself. "A passing of the torch. That sounds nice?" I could see the gears turning in Scarlett's head. She hated the idea, wanted it done now in private. But I could also see her recognizing the advantage. A public signing. Witnesses. If I signed the papers in front of a room full of people, it would be much harder for anyone to claim later that she'd coerced me in a dark room. She looked at Rick. He shrugged. "It might actually be better," he said quietly. "More legitimate. Harder to contest." Scarlett sighed a long-suffering sound. She looked at me with pure venom in her eyes. "Fine," she said. "One party. Tomorrow night. But you invite your trashy friends, and I'll invite some real people. People who matter. We'll show them that the Martinez family still has class." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "But Sunday morning, Sophia. Sunday morning you sign everything. Or so help me God, I will put you in a home so fast your head will spin." I gave her my best vacant smile. "Okay, Scarlett. Sunday morning." I shuffled toward the hallway, leaving them in the wet ruin of the dining room. But inside I was calculating. Scarlett wanted to invite people who matter, her high society friends, the people she desperately wanted to impress. Perfect. I wanted an audience. I wanted every single person she tried to impress to see exactly what she was. She'd just handed me the perfect stage for her execution. I woke up at 5 in the morning on Saturday, not because I had to, but because I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, going over every detail of the plan, checking for holes, for weaknesses, for anything that could go wrong. By 6, I was on the phone with Jack Torres. "It's today, Jack," I said. "Tonight, 7 o'clock sharp. Are the boys ready?" "Ready as we'll ever be," Jack's rough voice came through the line. "But Sophie, you sure about this? Having us show up like that, it's going to cause a scene." "That's exactly what I want," I said. "I want a scene. I want Scarlett to show her true colors in front of everyone she's trying to impress." "All right," he said. I heard him take a drag on his cigarette. "We'll be there. Work clothes, muddy boots, the whole 9 yards. But Sophie, what about the big screen? You still want us to bring the projector?" "Yes. Bring it to the service entrance at 4. Patty will let you in. I'll set it up in the ballroom while Scarlett is getting ready. She's too busy picking out her outfit to notice what I'm doing." Jack chuckled. "You've thought of everything." "I've had 15 years to think," I said quietly. "Tonight I speak." After I hung up with Jack, I made another call, this one to Victoria Hayes. "The debt purchase went through," she told me without preamble. "As of midnight last night, you own Dylan's obligation to Carter Williams, $542,000 plus 18% annual interest. He's in default, which means you can call in the full amount immediately. Perfect, I said. What about the custody papers? Ready to file. I just need your signature. But Sophia, are you sure about this? Taking custody of a 17-year-old at your age? I'm sure, I said firmly. That girl is not going to spend one more day with those people. How soon can we make it official? If they sign voluntarily, it can be done in 24 hours. If they don't... Victoria paused. I have 2 police officers lined up to attend your party tonight. Plainclothes. They'll be witnesses. If Scarlett and Dylan refuse to sign, or if there's any indication of immediate danger to the child, the officers can intervene. Good, I said. Thank you, Victoria. Sophie, she said, her voice softer now. Be careful tonight. Desperate people do desperate things. If Scarlett realizes she's losing... I know, I said. I'll be careful, but I'm not backing down. Not this time. I spent the morning staying out of Scarlett's way, which wasn't difficult. She'd taken over the entire East Wing like it was her personal headquarters. I could hear her on the phone calling her society friends, painting a picture of the evening that bore no resemblance to reality. Yes, darling, it's so sad, she was saying to someone, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Sophia's mind is completely gone. Dementia, the doctors say. But we're trying to honor her while she still recognizes faces. It's a passing of the torch, really. She's handing everything over to Dylan and me. You simply must come. I was standing in the hallway outside her room, not hiding exactly, but not making my presence known either. Through the crack in the door, I could see her laying out clothes on the bed. Designer labels everywhere, a dress that probably cost $4,000 shoes that were certainly $800 jewelry she'd borrowed from my own collection without asking. My phone buzzed. A fraud alert from my credit card. Bella Vista Catering, $12,000. Premium Wine Distributors, $5,000. Lotus Flower Design, $3,000. She'd stolen my credit card information probably while I was napping yesterday and was charging the party to my account. A younger version of me would have stormed in there and confronted her, would have canceled the charges, thrown her out on the street. But I just cleared the notification and put my phone back in my pocket. Let her spend it. Every dollar was another nail in her coffin. Grand larceny on top of everything else. She wasn't just a bad daughter-in-law anymore. She was a felon in the making. At 2 p.m, while Scarlett was at the salon getting her hair done also on my credit card, I went to work. Jack had dropped off the projector and screen at the service entrance just as planned. Patty helped me carry it to the ballroom. The old housekeeper didn't ask questions, but I could see the concern in her eyes. Ms. Martinez, she said quietly, I don't trust those people. That woman, the way she talks to you. I know Patty, I said, setting up the projector stand. But after tonight, you won't have to worry about her anymore. The ballroom was perfect for what I had planned. It had high ceilings, a small stage at one end, and room for at least 100 people. The previous owners had used it for charity galas and fundraisers. I'd never used it at all until now. I positioned the projector behind a velvet curtain where it wouldn't be visible from the main floor. I connected it to my laptop and tested the feed. The video I'd compiled from my security cameras played perfectly on the massive screen. I watched it through once, making sure every damning moment was captured in crystal clarity, Scarlett in the kitchen calling me a useless old fool who should have died sooner. The conversation in the guest bedroom about stripping the carcass before the bank could seize assets. The discussion of the pills, the same pills she'd used on her own mother. And finally, the moment from last night, Scarlett slapping Lily across the face. I'd edited the footage down to 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Long enough to be devastating, short enough to hold attention. I saved the file with a simple name, truth.mp4. Then I hid the remote control in the flower arrangement on the podium right where I'd be able to reach it easily. The stage was set. At 5 o'clock, I went to check on Lily. I found her in her room, sitting on the bed staring at nothing. She'd lost even more weight. In just the 2 days she'd been here, I could see her collarbones jutting out beneath her thin shirt. How are you holding up? I asked gently, sitting down beside her. Scared, she admitted. What if something goes wrong? What if they... Nothing's going to go wrong, I said, though I knew I couldn't promise that. But I need you to do something for me tonight. Anything. Stay quiet. Stay in the background. When your mother is cruel to Jack and the boys, and she will be cruel, don't react. Don't defend them. Don't defend me. Just watch. Let her build her own gallows. Lily nodded slowly. And after you'll never have to be afraid of them again. I pulled out the custody papers Victoria had prepared. See this? After tonight, these will be filed with the court. Your parents will sign them or they'll go to prison. Either way, you're mine. You're safe. Tears welled up in her eyes. Why are you doing this for me, Grandma? You don't even know me. Not really. Because you're my granddaughter, I said simply. And because no child should be used as a bargaining chip to pay off gambling debts. And because... I paused, choosing my words carefully. Because I failed your father. I was so busy building a business that I didn't see what he was becoming. I can't fix him, I know that now. But I can save you. She threw her arms around me and held on tight. I could feel her ribs through her shirt, feel how fragile she'd become. We're going to fix that too, I whispered. After tonight, we're going to put some meat on these bones. Real food home cooking. I'll teach you to make your grandfather's favorite recipes. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. Really? Really. But first we have to get through tonight. Can you be strong for me? I can try. That's all I ask. By 6:30, the house was transformed. The caterers Scarlett had hired had set up round tables in the ballroom, covered in white linens and centerpieces that probably cost more than most people's weekly groceries. The bar was stocked with top-shelf liquor. The buffet was laden with expensive food I'd never eat. It was ostentatious, wasteful, everything I'd never been, but it was perfect for what I needed. Scarlett's guests started arriving at 6:45. They came in luxury cars, Mercedes, BMWs, Teslas, and they wore designer clothes that screamed wealth. These were her people, the social climbers, the status seekers, the ones who measured worth in square footage and stock portfolios. I recognized a few faces from the society pages: Veronica Ashford, wife of a tech CEO, Gregory Thorne, a plastic surgeon to the stars, Natasha Williams, no relation to Carter, thankfully, who ran some kind of boutique PR firm. They air-kissed Scarlett and complimented her dress and pretended to care about poor Sophia's condition, while eyeing the house and calculating its value. I played my part, standing in the foyer in a simple navy dress, the same one I'd worn to Robert's funeral, actually with my hair barely combed and a vacant smile on my face. When Scarlett introduced me to her friends, I shook their hands limply and forgot their names immediately. It's so sad, I heard Veronica whisper to Gregory. She used to own that landscaping company, didn't she? Hard to believe she made enough to afford this place. Probably sold at exactly the right time, Gregory whispered back. Lucky timing, but clearly she's in no condition to manage money now. Good thing the sun is stepping in. If they only knew. At 7 o'clock exactly, I heard a low rumble outside, growing louder. It vibrated through the floor, rattling the crystal in the chandelier. Scarlett's guests stopped talking, looking toward the windows. Headlights swept across the room, not the refined beams of luxury sedans, but the harsh glare of heavy-duty work trucks. Then came the sound that made Scarlett's face go pale, the deep bellowing air horn of an F-150. Jack Torres had arrived. The front door opened and Jack walked in like he owned the place. Behind him were 5 of my best guys from the old Martinez Landscapes crew: Tommy Ray, Jesse Frank, and Carlos. They looked exactly as I'd asked them to. Jack wore his Carhartt jacket, the one with grease stains that would never come out. His work boots were caked with dried mud. There was sawdust in his graying hair, and he smelled like diesel fuel and honest work. Tommy had paint splattered across his jeans. Ray's shirt had welding burns. Jesse had soil under his fingernails. Frank was limping from an old injury, and Carlos, the youngest at 30, looked eager and defiant. They walked into that pristine foyer, their boots thudding on the marble, and they looked magnificent. Scarlett's guests gasped. Actual gasps like they'd never seen working men before. They stepped back, clutching their champagne flutes as if poverty might be contagious. Scarlett marched toward them, her face twisted in fury. She stopped 3 feet in front of Jack, looking him up and down with naked disgust. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "Who let you in here? Deliveries are around the back." Jack took off his baseball cap and held it in his hands. He looked at Scarlett with calm, steady eyes, the same eyes that had stared down angry clients and unreasonable inspectors for 20 years. "We're not here for a delivery, ma'am," he said, his voice deep and level. "We're here for the party. Sophia invited us." Scarlett let out a bark of laughter. "Invited you? Look at you, you're tracking filth onto the floor. This is a black tie event, not a construction site. Get out. Get out right now before I call the police. Jack didn't move. He looked past her directly at me. We're friends of the family, ma'am. Friends? Scarlett scoffed. She turned to address the room, making sure everyone could hear her indignation. These are not friends. These are employees. Hired help. And clearly they don't know their place. She pointed a manicured finger at the door. Get out, you're ruining the atmosphere. You smell like a gas station. If you want a plate of leftovers, you can go around the back. But get out of my sight. The room was dead silent. Every eye was on Scarlett, watching her cruelty on full display. Logan stood near the bar looking mortified, but he didn't say a word to stop her. He just swirled his drink and studied the floor. It was time. I stepped away from the wall where I'd been standing. I dropped the stoop in my shoulders just a fraction. I walked toward the door, my steps steadier than they'd been all day. Scarlett, I said. Ed. She spun around. Sophia, tell these people to leave. They're embarrassing us. They're my guests, I said clearly. Scarlett glared at me, her eyes full of warning. Sophia, remember the papers. Remember the bank. Don't test me. She turned back to the crowd, forcing her face into an apologetic smile. I'm so sorry, everyone. My mother-in-law's mind isn't what it used to be. She tends to associate with, lower elements. She doesn't understand that there are standards for an evening like this. She looked back at Jack with a sneer. Please forgive her. She spent her whole life digging in dirt. Hard to wash that kind of stink off, isn't it? The insult hung in the air like a slap. It was a slap in the face to every person who'd ever earned an honest living, to every man and woman who'd built something with their own hands. Jack's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent, respecting our plan. I walked past Scarlett and stood next to Jack. I put my hand on his shoulder. His jacket was rough under my fingers, familiar and grounding. Come in, Jack, I said loud and clear. There's plenty of food, grab a drink. Scarlett looked like she might explode. She opened her mouth to scream again, but she caught the look in my eye. Something she saw there scared her enough to make her pause. Fine, she hissed, leaning close so only I could hear. Let the trash stay. But you're going to pay for this, Sophia. Now get on that stage and finish this. I want those papers signed in 10 minutes. She stomped away, grabbing a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and downing it in one gulp. She signaled to the small jazz band she'd hired. If we could all gather in the ballroom, she announced, clapping her hands. We have a very special presentation. My mother-in-law has an announcement to make about the future of the Martinez estate. The crowd murmured and began moving toward the ballroom. I nodded to Jack. He winked at me. The workers filtered into the room, taking positions along the back wall, a silent line of flannel and denim against the velvet wallpaper. I walked toward the stage, my heart pounding. This was it, the moment I'd been planning for days, the moment I'd been waiting for in some ways for 15 years. The ballroom was dimly lit. The chandeliers turned low to focus attention on the small stage. A podium stood in the center, and behind it hung the massive screen ostensibly for family photos, according to the program Scarlett had printed up. Scarlett stood at the bottom of the stairs leading to the stage. She was holding a blue leather folder, the transfer documents, the guardianship papers, the keys to my prison. She smiled at me as I approached, but her eyes were cold as ice. Don't mess this up, old woman, she whispered as I passed her. Or I promise the nursing home I pick will make you wish you'd died in this house. I climbed the stairs. My legs felt heavy, not from age, but from the weight of what I was about to do. I reached the podium and gripped the sides. The wood felt solid under my hands. I looked out at the sea of faces. Strangers, mostly. People who'd come for the spectacle. People who thought they were about to witness a sad old woman surrender her life to her family. I saw Logan near the front looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. I saw Lily hiding in the shadows near the back, her eyes wide and terrified. I saw Scarlett standing directly below me, looking up with triumph and impatience, holding that pen. I saw Jack and the crew along the back wall, arms crossed. I saw Victoria Hayes near the side entrance, giving me a subtle nod. I saw the two plainclothes police officers in the rear corners, watching carefully. I leaned into the microphone. It squealed briefly, then settled. Thank you all for coming tonight, I said. My voice was still scratchy, still playing the role. It's good to see so many expensive faces. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. My daughter-in-law Scarlett went to great lengths to bring you all here. I continued. She wanted you to witness something important. She told you this was a passing of the torch. She told you I was going to sign over my legacy to her and my son. Scarlett nodded encouragingly, gesturing for me to get on with it. And she's right, I say. I'm going to show you something tonight. I paused, letting the silence build. But I think there's been a misunderstanding about what my legacy actually is. The room grew quieter. You see, Scarlett thinks legacy is about houses and bank accounts. She thinks it's about what you can take. I looked directly at her. But I built my life on something else. I built it on truth. My voice was gaining strength now, the shakiness falling away like a discarded costume. And tonight I think we're overdue for some truth. I reached under the podium and found the remote control I'd hidden there. My thumb hovered over the button. I looked at Scarlett one last time. She was frowning now, sensing that something had gone off script. "Sophia," she warned in a loud whisper. "Read the cards." I ignored her. "I invited you all here to see the future of the Martinez family," I said to the crowd. "But before we look forward, we need to look at the present. I want to show you exactly who is inheriting my empire." I pressed the button. The lights dimmed completely, leaving only the glow of the massive screen behind me. "I want to show you," I said, my voice carrying through the darkness, "the real legacy of the Martinez family." And then the video started to play. The screen flickered to life with a digital timestamp. 3 nights ago, 11:47 p.m. The footage was from my kitchen security camera. Crystal clear, high definition. And the audio, thanks to the expensive sound system Scarlett had rented, was perfect. Scarlett's voice filled the ballroom, shrill and cruel. "She's useless. The old fool should have died sooner. She's just taking up space. Once we get the signature, we dump her in that state facility off the highway. The cheap one. She won't know the difference. She'll probably be dead in 6 months anyway without her meds." A collective gasp rippled through the room. On screen, Scarlett paced back and forth, wineglass in hand, her face twisted in contempt. The audience sat frozen, looking from the screen to the real Scarlett, standing at the foot of the stage. The video continued, cutting to the guest bedroom conversation I'd recorded. "We strip the carcass before the vultures land." Scarlett's voice hissed through the speakers. "We sell everything, furniture, art, jewelry. We leave her with nothing." Another gasp. I heard someone whisper, "Oh my God." Then came the clip about the pills. "I have the blue ones in my bag. Used them on Grandma Eleanor before she went to the home." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Several women put their hands to their mouths. But the final clip was the one that shattered everything. The dinner scene from last night played in excruciating detail. The audience watched Lily trip. They watched the water spill. They watched the papers get ruined. And then, with a clarity that was sickening, they watched Scarlett swing her arm back and strike her own daughter across the face. The crack of the slap echoed through the ballroom. "You stupid little brat!" Scarlett screamed. I pressed the button again. The screen went black. The silence that followed was suffocating. 50 pairs of eyes were fixed on Scarlett Martinez. She stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, her face drained of all color. Her makeup stood out like war paint on a corpse. She opened her mouth to speak, but for the first time in her life she had no words. She looked around the room, searching for an ally, searching for someone, anyone who would look at her with anything other than revulsion. She found no one. Even her high society friends were staring at her like she was something diseased. Logan was staring at the floor, his shoulders hunched, wishing the ground would open and swallow him whole. I let the silence hang for 10 long seconds, let it weigh on them, let them marinate in their shame. Then I stepped away from the podium. I straightened my back. The stoop I'd been faking for days vanished. The trembling in my hands ceased completely. I stood at my full height, 5 feet 8 inches of hard-earned muscle and bone. I buttoned my jacket with steady fingers. I looked down at them from the stage, and I didn't look like a confused old woman anymore. I looked like the woman who had commanded crews of hundreds. The woman who had built an empire from dirt. "You thought I was old?" I said. My voice didn't waver. It didn't scratch. It boomed through the microphone, deep and resonant. "You thought I was feeble. You thought because my hands are rough and I wear work boots that I was stupid." I pointed at Scarlett. She flinched. "You stood in my kitchen and called me useless. You planned to drug me. You planned to lock me away in a warehouse to die so you could buy more handbags. My voice dropped to a dangerous growl. And you struck my granddaughter. In my house. I held up my hands. I built this life with these two hands. I worked 14-hour days in the rain and snow. I built walls that still stand 40 years later. I planted trees that are now taller than this house. I leaned forward. Do you really think a woman who can do that is easy to trick? Do you really think I didn't see you for exactly what you are? Scarlett finally found her voice. It was desperate, screechy. It's fake, deep fake technology. She doctored it. She's crazy. She's senile. Don't you see she's trying to humiliate us? I laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. Stop lying, Scarlett. It's over. The performance is done. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, my bank statement. You told everyone here that the bank is coming to take this house, I said, addressing the crowd. You told my son we were broke. You used fear to manipulate me into signing over my rights. I unfolded the paper and held it up. This house is not being foreclosed on. I bought this estate 3 months ago. I paid $4.2 million, and I paid in cash. A murmur went through the crowd. Someone whispered, cash. I sold Martinez Landscapes 2 years ago, I announced, watching the blood drain from Logan's face. I sold it for $18 million. Logan looked up at me, his eyes wide with shock. His mouth formed the words 18 million, but no sound came out. I am not broke, Scarlett, I said. I have more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes, even with your shopping habits. I turned my gaze to Dylan. But you're a different story, aren't you? I pulled out the dossier Victoria had given me and tossed it down the stairs. The papers fanned out at Logan's feet. I know about the crypto, Dylan. I know about the gambling. I know about the arrest in Nevada. I know about the warrant in Florida. I took a step closer to the edge of the stage. And I know about the $542,000 you owe to a man named Carter Williams. Scarlett let out a strangled sound. She looked at Dylan with betrayal in her eyes, not because he had the debt, but because the secret was out. You came here to hide, I said. You didn't come to care for me. You came to use me as a shield. You thought you could strip my assets to pay your debts. You thought you could sell this house, sell my dignity, maybe even sell my life to save yourselves. I looked out at the crowd. This is the legacy you came to see. This is what greed looks like when it takes off its mask. It's ugly, it rots, it's desperate, and it's weak. I turned back to Scarlett. You wanted a show. You wanted a passing of the torch. Well, here it is. I'm not passing anything to you. Not a penny, not a single blade of grass from this property. I looked at Jack, who was grinning with his arms crossed. I looked at Lily, who was watching me with awe. I'm done playing the fool, I said. And I'm done with you. Scarlett seemed to realize she was losing the audience. She tried one last desperate pivot, summoning tears on command. Sophia, please, she sobbed. We were desperate. We made mistakes, but we're family. You can't just humiliate us like this. Her voice cracked. We owe bad people, Sophia. They'll kill us. You have $18 million. $500,000 is nothing to you. You have to help us. You're Dylan's mother. I stared at her. The audacity was truly bottomless. I am his mother, I said coldly, which is why what I'm about to do breaks my heart. But it's the only way to save what's left of his soul. I signaled to the back of the room. Victoria Sterling stepped out from the shadows where she'd been waiting. She walked through the silent crowd carrying her briefcase, looking like an executioner in a pantsuit. She walked up to the stage and handed me a document. You're right about one thing, Scarlett, I said. You do owe bad people. I paused. Or at least you did. Scarlett blinked. For a moment, hope sparked in her eyes. You paid him? No, I said, and a dark smile crossed my face. I didn't pay him for you. I bought the debt. The hope vanished, replaced by confusion and then absolute terror. I own your debt now, I said. I own the paper. I own the interest. I own the collateral. I leaned into the microphone. Which means effectively I own you. I let that sink in. I watched the realization wash over them like ice water. Now we're going to negotiate, I said. And this time I'm the one making the rules. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Scarlett screamed a sound less human than animal. She lunged toward the stage, her hands like claws, her face twisted in rage. "You have 18 million, she shrieked. 500,000 is nothing. Pocket change. You're his mother. You have to save us. You owe us." Jack stepped forward, blocking her path. She slammed into him and bounced off. Tommy and Ray moved in, forming a human wall. Scarlett stood there panting, her carefully styled hair coming loose, her expensive dress wrinkled. She looked at the crowd of her friends, all filming on their phones. She looked at Dylan weeping on the floor. She looked at me. "You're a monster," she spat. "You're evil. You bought our debt just to torture us." "I bought the debt," I said calmly, "to stop you from selling my granddaughter." Victoria stepped forward again, pulling another document from her briefcase. "Let's be very clear about the legal standing here, Mrs. Martinez," Victoria said, her voice projecting to every corner of the room. "Ms. Sophia Martinez did not pay off your debt as a gift. She purchased the promissory note from Zenith Holdings. She owns the principal, the interest, and since the note was already in default when she acquired it, she has the right to call in the full amount immediately." She paused. "That means you owe her $542,000, including penalties, and you have exactly 0 days to pay it." "We can't pay that," Scarlett whispered. "We don't have it." "I know," I said. I looked down at them from the stage. "And since you cannot pay, I have options. I can seize your assets. I can garnish your future wages. I can ensure you never own a credit card or bank account again." I leaned forward. "But there's more. I have video evidence of you conspiring to commit elder abuse. I have evidence of you discussing drugging me. I have evidence of you attempting to defraud a senior citizen. And I have records of you stealing my credit card to pay for this party." I pointed to the police officers standing at the back. "That's 5 to 10 years in a state penitentiary, Scarlett, for both of you. Conspiracy, fraud, assault on a minor." Dylan looked up, his face gray. "Mom, please, I can't go to jail. I won't survive." "Then listen closely," I interrupted. "Because I'm only offering this once." Victoria pulled out the custody papers. "I'm willing to forgive the debt," I said. "I'm willing to wipe the slate clean. I will not press criminal charges for the credit card theft. I will not hand over the video to the district attorney." "What do you want?" Scarlett asked. "I want Lily." The room went completely still. Lily, standing by the kitchen door, put her hand over her mouth. "I want you to sign over full legal custody of Lily to me," I said. "You are unfit parents. You were willing to trade her to a loan shark to save yourselves. You struck her in my home. I will not allow her to be in your care for one more second." I paused. "And I want you gone. I want you to sign a restraining order. You will not come within 100 miles of this house. You will not contact Lily. You will not contact me. You will leave the state of Illinois and never come back." I looked down at them. "That's the deal. Your freedom for my granddaughter." Scarlett stared at me, then at Lily. I could see her calculating, weighing the value of her daughter against the value of her own skin. "You can't ask us to give up our child," she said, but her voice was hollow. "It's not extortion," I said. "It's a rescue operation." I looked at Dylan. "The police are waiting. They've seen the video. If you walk out in handcuffs, you go to a holding cell tonight. With your record, you won't get bail." Dylan scrambled to his feet. He looked at Scarlett, at the document, at the police officers. He didn't look at his daughter. "Give me the pen," he said. "Dylan, what are you?" Scarlett started. "I'm not going to jail," he shouted. "I'm not going to jail for you. Give me the pen." He snatched it from Victoria's hand and scribbled his signature so hard the pen tore through the page. "There," he panted. "I signed it. I gave her up. Just let me go." I looked at my son and felt the last shred of hope die. He'd just sold his only child to save himself. I looked at Lily. She was crying, but she wasn't looking at Dylan with sadness. She was looking at him with clarity, finally seeing him for what he really was. "Sign the paper, Scarlett," I said, "or you go to jail alone." She looked at the police stepping forward, at the guests filming at the wreckage of her ambitions. She snatched the pen and signed with a violent slash. "Are you happy now?" she screamed. "You won. You stole my life." "I didn't steal anything," I said calmly. "I just took out the trash." Victoria checked the signatures and nodded. It was done. It was legal. Lily was safe. "Now get out," I said. Dylan ran for the door without looking back. Scarlett stood there a moment longer, shaking with rage, before she turned and followed. But she didn't make it outside. The police officers stepped forward, badges out. "Scarlett Martinez, you're under arrest for assault on a minor and conspiracy to commit elder abuse." Her screaming faded as they led her away. I walked down from the stage and went straight to Lily. She ran into my arms and I held her tight. "It's over," I whispered. "You're home." The sign was being installed as Lily and I stood watching Martinez and Martinez Design. My granddaughter stood beside me in work boots and jeans, holding landscape plans she'd designed herself for our first client, Mrs. Henderson, who wanted her garden renovated. I watched Lily present the plans with confidence, shaking Mrs. Henderson's hand professionally. She'd gained 15 pounds in 3 months. The color had returned to her cheeks. The fear had left her eyes. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria, FYI. Dylan in Nevada, working as dishwasher. Scarlett in Arizona, working retail. Restraining order holding. Die. I deleted the message. That chapter was closed. I focused on Lily, on the future, on the legacy that mattered. Not money, not a mansion, but teaching the next generation to build, to earn, to have honor. And as I watched my granddaughter shake hands with her first client, I smiled. Robert would have been proud.